Today in the Freshman Run Club, I've run 300 miles in the Nike ZoomX Invincible 2. Let's talk about durability. Welcome back to the Freshman Run Club. So for today's video, I'm talking Nike ZoomX Invincible 2. Once again, this is my favorite shoe. I think it's a dead even tie between the Nike ZoomX Invincible and the Nike ZoomX Invincible 2. As you may know, if you follow me, I have made a bunch of videos about this shoe and the ZoomX Invincible 1. Fantastic shoe. I'm not going to dive too deeply into why I love this shoe so much. Today, I'm just going to focus on the durability. So I recently ran 300 miles in this pair. This is the first pair of the ZoomX Invincibles I had. It took me a little while to get 300 miles in these because I was still working through some mileage in the original ZoomX Invincibles. I bought a bunch of them because I wasn't sure if they were going to go away or not. So I ran a lot in those. So I finally did get to 300 miles, and I just want to talk about how they've held up over time. So let's start with the outsole. This is one of the most important parts when it comes to durability, for me at least. So I am a heel striker, and I honestly, at this point in my life, I'm not going to change that. There are no Instagram posts or TikTok posts about how horrible heel striking is for you to change my mind. When I heel strike, I strike on my heel, which wears down the outsole. So you can see this is 300 miles. I have worn through the outsole rubber on the outside heel, and I'm starting to get down to the ZoomX foam. This is the worst sign of wear and tear on this entire shoe after 300 miles. I would say I wore through these at probably about 150 to 200 miles. I started to kind of scratch the surface. It has actually not disintegrated as fast as I thought it would, but over the past 50 miles, I'd say this hole is starting to get bigger, and the foam is really starting to get exposed. So I really do think I'm kind of at the end of the lifespan of these shoes. I got 500 miles in the original version of the Invincibles. I made a video about that. I don't recommend doing that. My knees started to hurt by the end of it. I could tell the ZoomX Invincible foam was really breaking down. These definitely wore down a little faster, although I will say I think the pace that you run in your shoes impacts how they break down. So I definitely ran slower in these because I was just doing a lot more just like easy runs, slow runs, as opposed to some of the original pairs where I was training for like a half marathon, shorter distances, faster speeds. My stride scrapes on the pavement a little bit less when I'm running faster. So that's why I think these broke down a little bit more. But the outsole, other than the heel, it is in pretty good shape. The nubs that kind of give a little bit of traction and a little bit of grip on these shoes have held up pretty well, with the exception of the flat spot on the heel. Nothing has come separate from the midsole. Everything is like still glued on and all intact. So overall, pretty durable there. So one thing I did notice, and I mentioned this in my initial review of this shoe, is pretty quickly, within 3 or 4 runs, I noticed that the heel was starting to crack. You can really see it here in the back of the shoe. It cracked, and I was very nervous about that, but it actually didn't get any worse. It just basically stayed the same. So I don't know if I like caught my foot on a step or a chain link fence or barbed wire, or a dog bit my heel and I didn't know about it. But initially kind of concerning amount of ripping in the actual midsole, but it just stayed the same for the next 250 or so miles. So no complaints there. As far as the rest of the midsole, I think it held up pretty well. It's obvious that after about, I would say 250 miles, you can tell there just isn't as much spring to the actual shoes, which isn't surprising. It's nothing but ZoomX foam. There's no other like stabilizing material that's gonna help preserve that foam. It's just gonna, over time, you're gonna compact it by just running in it. So I would say at about 200 miles, 250 miles, it starts to get noticeable. At around 300 miles, I think that's, at least for this pair of shoes, that's when it really became noticeable that, hey, this isn't quite the same shoe that it was when I started running in it. Otherwise, everything held up pretty well. Again, the outsole did not separate from the midsole. It all stayed intact on the back, around the heel clip. Like, everything with the midsole held up pretty well. It just gets more compacted over time, which again makes sense based on the type of material that these shoes are made out of. So moving up to the upper, this was probably the most impressive part of the shoe. Extremely durable. So this is a fly knit upper, and it's really tightly woven. So I think it'd be really hard to actually like rip this upper or cause any kind of damage. There is absolutely no damage to the top of this shoe. It held up perfectly, remained intact, just got a little bit dirty. Obviously, this is a black pair of shoes, so you can't quite see the dirt. Otherwise, no damage to this at all. On the previous version of the Invincible, let me get that. Both the Invincible and the Invincible 2 have this ridiculous amount of padding on the heel collar. The original version, which this is the first version, has this like It's a much more softer, like plush material. On the pair that I ran 500 miles, I did end up ripping that a little bit because like my heel was kind of striking the inside of that occasionally. On the ZoomX Invincible 2, it's a much more durable, like firmer, more tightly woven material. So that didn't happen at all. Again, if it wasn't just a little bit dirty, I would say it looks completely brand new. Otherwise, the laces held up. Those were great. A little bit longer laces with the ZoomX Invincible 2 versus the Invincible 1, which I know a lot of people were very mad about with the Invincible 1. This laces were fine. The tongue held up great. Nothing to report there. The insole was fine. There was some like text, some like words on the inside of that obviously get rubbed off within the first few runs you go on. Otherwise, the insole was fine. Inside of the shoe stayed intact. Really, the same type of shoe. So overall, I would say this is a durable shoe depending on your stride. So for me, I'm probably gonna burn through these a little bit quicker just because I'm putting so much pressure on that outside heel area when my foot hits the ground. If you do have more of a normal stride where you're striking on your forefoot and pushing off, I think you'll probably be able to get a little more mileage out of these. But again, something to pay attention to is just how springy that foam is, because once it starts to go a little bit dead, that's when I noticed a little bit of like knee pain, a little bit of shin pain when I was running, and just kind of a sign for me to switch out these for a new pair. That is the durability of the ZoomX Invincible 2. That is today's video. If you have any questions about the shoe, about the durability, about how it's held up, or if you have any comments on the shoe, how is it held up for you? Have you noticed some of the ZoomX foam start to break down? Definitely leave a comment below. I'll do my best to answer those. But again, that is today's video. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you soon.